Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Foreign Secretary, fascinating speech you gave on Friday. Your vision for a post-Brexit role for Britain in the world, global Britain. Now, one of the things you said in that is it's really important for Britain to be open, preaching liberal values to the world. But there's a problem there, isn't it? Because, you know, you are in favour, you say, broadly open borders, but we're leaving the European Union to control our borders.
Not open. Let's be clear. There's a big difference between being pro people coming here, people with talent, originality, dynamism, who want to come and make their lives here. I've always been in favour of that. I think there was a long period when I was just about the only politician mainstream politician in the country who was arguing for that. And as mayor of this city, of London, I saw the benefits of that. But the problem was that we were doing it without any control, and people noticed that. And so last year, this year, in fact, you had these very, very high figures. We've had them again, I think 330,000 net, with about half, more than half, coming from the EU in a way that wasn't being controlled. And I think that what people wanted to see in that vote on June 20th, they weren't hostile to foreigners. I don't think the people of this country are xenophobic, but they want politicians to take responsibility for the policies that they have. And the only way of doing that is to have control. But isn't the message just a bit
too subtle for the world, as it were? Because what people are seeing in our withdrawal from the EU...
But it's up to brilliant communicators like you, Robert, to explain these subtleties. And yes, it is, you know, to be open but to control it is something that can be massively beneficial for... that's how the Americans do it. That's how the Australians do it. There's no reason why you shouldn't take back control of your immigration policy, but then also be in a better position to make the argument to the country for the economic benefits of getting the right sort of people to come here. I think most reasonable people understand that, and they get it, and they support it.
Well, I'm not sure they necessarily get it outside of Britain, but when you are promoting liberal values internationally, which is one of the things that you and Theresa May have both said that you wish to do, how much bargaining power do you really have when what really matters at the moment to us is trade deals to keep the economy going? We're supplicants, aren't we, when we're talking to illiberal countries like China, like Russia?
Don't forget that the UK constitutes of the EU trading power about 20%, getting off 20% of GDP. We are, I think, probably 20 or 30% of the international aid contributors. We are a massive power within the EU at the moment.
No, but I'm talking about our relationship with the rest of the world, because you know, these trade deals are going to be really important to us, aren't they?
Yeah.
And if we're desperate to get trade, how much influence are we going to have of the other sort that you want, which is a promoter of liberal values?
Let me just give you one example. I've just been in Pakistan, in Afghanistan. I've been in Cyprus, been in Rome just in the last 10 days or so, and everywhere you go, you find British people who are doing an amazing job. There are 6 million girls in the Punjab who are now being educated thanks to the work of British Department for International Development and thanks to the investments that the UK taxpayers are making. I believe that it's profoundly in the interests of this country that we are. There are girls going to school in Afghanistan thanks to the sacrifice of the British Army over the last decade and a half. They have made a real difference. There are fields that are being cleared of mines. There are villages that are getting electricity that wouldn't have got it if it hadn't been for the labours of British troops. If you go to Rome,
But can I just put one point, because we're talking about that part of the world. Many people say that a mistake that Theresa May, when she went to India to talk trade, was that she upset the government by being very firm that, for example, they want more guarantees on Indian students coming to the UK, and she was basically saying, no, And that meant we got nowhere in trade negotiations.
She wasn't saying no. I mean, Theresa made it very clear.
That's how they took it.
Theresa made it very clear. Actually, we have a very fast system of turnover for visas for India now. We're trying to make it even
I think your
better.
brother would say not fast enough.
And look, I'm not only in agreement with every aspect of the government's policy. I'm particularly in agreement with my brother, as you might imagine. I think he's right about in his approach.
And does the Prime Minister agree with Joe Johnson, your brother, on this?
It's a great compliment to this country that, as Theresa and I have found, virtually everywhere you go, the number one question that people ask is, how can I make sure that my kids are going to be able to come to the UK and come to university here? Can I give you one statistic? Of all the kings and queens and presidents and prime ministers in the world today, 1 in 7 were educated in Britain. And there's no reason now, when you look at the talent that's coming to our universities, to think that ratio will go down. So we are the knowledge capital of the world, and that's a great thing for the UK.
So just to be clear, you would take the view that, for example, university students should not be included in immigration figures, I assume, which they currently are.
I do take that view, but I think it's of massive benefit to this country that we are open. Obviously, you've got to have limits. You've got to make sure, as Theresa has rightly said, as the Prime Minister said, when they come, they've got to be coming for a bona fide degree, and they're not staying on without permission. That is totally reasonable. That is totally reasonable. But don't forget that international students. I used to be shadow spokesman for higher education, and even then, the contribution was, I think, £5 billion a year from their fees to our HE, to our higher education economy.
Totally. Well, now, we used to have hard and soft. We've apparently now got 50 shades of grey Brexit, according to the Sunday Times. Now, this is based on what David Davis has actually been saying for some time, but said publicly last week, which is he thinks there is an argument for continuing to pay some money to the European Union if it secures us better access to the single market.
I don't think David was saying that. What he said was it was one of the things that could be considered. And that's certainly all things are currently under consideration.
For you, it's not a red line, therefore. I mean, paying some money over is not a red line.
I don't want to give set out a negotiating position today beyond what the Prime Minister has herself said, and she's made some very, very clear points. Number one, and I heard Ed Ball saying earlier on before I came in that you wouldn't get clarity on. Number one, take back control of freedom of movement, and that's obviously important. Number two, money. Take back control of the money that is currently preempted.
Sure, but if we voluntarily pay money in the way that the Swiss do, for example, that would be acceptable, wouldn't it?
Let me give you some more clarity. Number three.
Great. On this issue of money, you're going to give me clarity?
Number three, take back control of our laws, which is what people voted for. And I think for many people in this country, it was the number one thing they wanted.
Was it the number one for you? Was it the number one for you?
It was.
So more than control of immigration for you was number one control of laws?
It was about democracy, and that's what I think people want. They want to see So what the Prime Minister has said is that there will be no jurisdiction of the European Court of Justice in this country. So EU
Can I just ask you on this
Number
issue?
four. Hang on. You wanted clarity.
There's a fourth.
You're getting clarity. Number four. Britain is a great free trading nation. We have the chance now to be a great campaigner for free trade around the world and to do free trade deals. Now, you take those 4 points together, you have an absolute wealth of information about what Brexit will look like, the very exciting possibilities
except
it raises.
Except these are principles.
You don't have to be a brilliant
these are principles, but they
lawyer
don't
to deduce from those things more or less how it will work. I
don't think that's right. Almost everybody who is not in the cabinet would say it's impossible to deduce from that whether we are, for example, in the single market or out of the single market, in the customs union or out of the customs union.
I'm not going to. If you,
and these things you're not going to tell me. Are you going to tell me in the customs union or in the single market are trivial issues? Are they trivial issues?
Not at all. But I think I've given you a very clear picture of.
So which of those two possibilities?
So taking back control of our borders, taking back control of our money,
all right.
taking back control of our laws,
because I want to ask you a different. I want to ask you about something material
to you. I think
then.
most people actually will listen to that and think that's a great agenda.
And
I'll tell you something else.
Were you smeared?
It's an agenda. It's an agenda that is being increasingly supported by our friends and partners around the EU.
Now the Sunday Telegraph says you were smeared
by our friends more widely. So one of the things I find so extraordinary about travelling around the world is that they genuinely see the opportunities of doing these free trade deals with us. And so in the 93% of the world that isn't in the EU, they're thinking, wow, Britain's back. Britain wants to do a deal with us. This is there's a very, very exciting thing going on.
It is very exciting. But I do want to ask you about this charge on the front of the Sunday Telegraph that you felt smeared when people said that you were wholly in favour of immigration.
Well, I think I was in. I was abroad,
smeared?
And there was a story which seemed to me to be the result of some misunderstanding. I've always been in favour of
controlled immigration.
Controlled immigration. I think that, as I've said, I think the numbers in the last few years have been very high. And, running at net 330,000 without control,
but they did generate quite high levels, much higher levels of growth in this country than in the rest of the EU. But Allegra, I think our viewers been talking to you, I think.
They have, about serious issues and funny issues. The serious issue is Boris Johnson telling you that he wants foreign students to be taken out of immigration figures. He may have said this before, but anyway, this is an idea that Theresa May is, as Jason Groves from the Mail points out, implacably opposed to. So there's a bit of a split there. The not so serious is that people have noticed that on another TV interview, Boris Johnson had a very long tie. He has since shortened it. He told us as he came into the studio, perhaps having long ties is a comfort he has had to give up as Foreign Secretary. As Foreign Secretary, there's loads of comforts he's given up, and we're going to talk you through just the ones we know about. First things first, he has had to give up his bike helmet here. You can't have the Foreign Secretary pootling around in broad daylight. That's a security hazard, but it means, Boris, we have worked out that you've probably given up 350 miles a year cycling from your home to here. You're agreeing. You think more than that? Did you cycle every day to City Hall?
I used to cycle all the way around London. I used to cycle everywhere.
Okay,
and I do miss it. But I've got to put. I mean,
why won't they let you do it?
Well, because it involves a sort of convoy of police cyclists plus cars plus God knows what. I mean, it's nothing compared to what in Pakistan. There were literally 5,000 police officers and
you think it's double,
two ambulances and a fire engine. so
you almost bankrupted the Pakistani economy.
Boris Johnson, I have three other comforts you've given up. You have given up your Telegraph column for your wordsmithery, and speaking your mind, it was over 250 grand a year. Now, the messy hairdo. Now, as you can see today, it is very much brushed, but he used to ruffle his hair up before he went on TV. I know, I saw him do it. I have to say, I prefer the ruffled look. And then very finally, this is the hairdo. And then very finally, we have the fact that he used to overlook all of London as mayor. He was elected with the largest direct mandate of anyone in the country. Right now, Boris Johnson, you are many things, but you are not the boss. Robert.
But
what Allegra says, as so often, is entirely true, and it is. But she makes a very good point. It is different being in the cabinet. And what you understand is it is a team.
How much of a culture shock has it been? Because you were broadly simply your own person before, and now you have to be a team player.
You do.
How sort of straitjacketed do you feel?
Not remotely, because I think that we're going in the right direction. And I think that what Theresa is doing is, I think her vision for what she wants to achieve, she's got a great clarity about where she wants to get to with Brexit. She wants to make a huge success of it. I think that the government's agenda of a country that works for everyone, trying to reach out to many of the people who voted Brexit, did feel excluded, did feel that no one was talking for them, did feel that it was unacceptable, for instance, that the incomes of people at the bottom of companies, bottom 20% of the incomes in companies, had diverged so colossally from those at the top.
Can I just ask
I think it's totally right that a one-nation Conservative government should be addressing that.
No, totally. We talked a lot about the principles.
Finally nodding over there behind me.
The personal bit of politics is important. You were plainly shocked. You seemed to be very depressed when you had to pull out of the leadership race after Michael Gove, when he would say, knifed you. How surprised were you that Theresa May offered you this fantastic job?
Well, look, I mean, I obviously, I think, generally speaking, people are surprised when I'm offered jobs. There's no doubt
that's not the point. No, that's not the point I'm making.
I remember when I became mayor of London, and people were absolutely.
Come on, serious for a second. Serious for a second.
I was very honoured to be given this job, but it's a very exciting time to be Foreign Secretary because genuinely, this is a moment when our foreign policy needs, to a certain extent, to be reforged. That's why I'm emphasising what we are doing now as global Britain, but also the potential to do more. And there's a massive potential to do more with the Commonwealth, in the UN, with the G7, G20, all these bodies where the UK is incredibly influential already. And in our relationships with the EU, we are going to forge a new European partnership, which I think they are starting to see the merits and the benefits of. We had a long-standing problem in our relations with the EU.
Sure.
Ed Balls kept us out of the single currency under Gordon Brown, and that was absolutely the right decision. But it was the beginning of a profound and important divergence between us and the rest of the EU.
Can I just ask you, because people have assumed that you didn't expect to wake up and find that you'd won the vote, the referendum vote. Were you very surprised?
I tell you what, as the night wore on, I got more and more excited because it was clear that we were.
But on that last day,
it was Sunderland. It was the numbers in Sunderland.
You're not answering. You're prevaricating. Come on. Were you shocked? Were you shocked?
I know what you're talking about. Is that slightly wan look on the morning after? I can explain that. You've got to understand that Michael and I had just seen a friend of ours had to resign, so David Cameron had to stand down, and that was actually. Of course, it was upsetting because if you think about it, he and I came into politics together, David and I. And one point I will make is that the referendum on the EU was the biggest apple of discord that I've ever seen hurled into British politics. It split families, it split parties. It was really painful, and I don't want to see that happen again. I think for the Liberal Democrats to burble on, and for Keir Starmer,
we're going to have to come back
to referendum.
This is all absolutely central to the current debate. But you were telling me earlier that you're a bit peckish. So we've got something for you. Allegra's got a little present. Look at this.
So Boris Johnson, you've always said that we can have our cake and eat it on the EU.
Are you going to have a bit of cake?
Want to know. You said you're hungry. You had no breakfast. So the question is, how do you have your cake and eat it on the EU?
I think we're going to demonstrate that. We're going to demonstrate that perfectly.
Fantastic.
Go on.
Now, the Foreign Secretary, Boris Johnson, is reported to be furious about leaked comments from EU ambassadors who tell Sky News, amongst others, that he had told them he supports free movement of people within the EU. Well, let's put that straight away then to the man himself, to the Foreign Secretary. He joins me now. Very good morning to you, Boris Johnson. Well,
good morning, Dermot.
Let's hear from the horse's mouth, if you excuse the phrase. Do you privately support free movement of people within the EU?
No, and I thought it was very wrong of whoever cooked that story up to put it to those ambassadors in that way, because what I said was very clearly that I'm a backer of immigration, but controlled immigration. I've always made it very clear that, when I was mayor of this city, London, where I am now, I thought there were ways in which the economy benefited from having a great diversity of talent in the workforce. But when people feel the strain of that in their lives, politicians have got to be able to control it. And that was a large amount of that was what a lot of the referendum campaign turned out to be about. So what I said to them was I was pro people coming to London to offer their talent and their originality, but it had to be controlled. And unfortunately, something got lost in the communication to... I don't know whether your reporter actually talked to those ambassadors.
I'm sure if they're ambassadors... Sorry, Foreign Secretary, if they're ambassadors to the UK, I'm sure they all speak very good English. I mean, either they're dissembling or lying, or you are. 4 ambassadors said they heard it several times. You said it's not government policy, but you do support free movement. That's 4 of them. They're not lying.
That's complete nonsense. Yes. Well, I think that they have been misrepresented, and if I may say so, I'm not entirely convinced that your reporter talked to those ambassadors, and I think actually, there were plenty of people at that breakfast, and it was I remember it vividly. We actually have a note by my own Foreign Office officials of what I said, and it was very clear. I said that I was pro-immigration for people of talent, but it had to be controlled. Now, something has obviously gone wrong in the translation of that, or the communication of that. But since then, plenty of other ambassadors have come forward to, well, perhaps the same ambassadors have come forward to stand up my version of events. So this is the kind of thing, Dermot, that you are going to get in the run-up to these negotiations. There will be all sorts of malarkey. There will be all sorts of people trying to say one thing or the other about the British negotiating position. My view is very, very clear. I do think that controlled immigration has been a good thing, but it's got to be something that politicians are held accountable for. When you have large numbers coming from the EU without any system of control, then people feel that they're not taking decisions about their own country in a way that they should. And
well, Mr. Johnson,
that's very important.
I just want to rewind a minute. I mean, because you seem to suggest that perhaps the journalists, and indeed Sky News journalists, might have been making it up. Now, you know, in the past, we know that as a journalist, you did that kind of thing. I mean, surely it's accurate reporting.
I'm sorry, old man. I'm sorry, man. Look, I want you. With great respect, Dermot. I think your story was a dud. It was wrong. It was a load of old baloney. That's not your fault. It's not even the fault of the journalist. I don't necessarily blame him. He was offered something which is completely untrue. It's nonsense. I think most of your viewers will understand exactly what my position is. It's been my position for a very long time.
Do you think there's a campaign to destabilise you wherever it's coming from?
No, I think that there was one story which, unfortunately, was not right. I'm glad that it's been corrected and people can understand what we're trying to do. And great respect to Sky News and all your magnificent journalism. That story did not quite reflect my views, and those are that you can have immigration, but it's got to be controlled, and you've also got to take back control of your money. You've got to take back control of our democracy, of our laws, and you've got to be in a position to do free trade deals, and that is what the Prime Minister wants to achieve.
And just tell me on Brexit, I mean, are you in favour, again, it's been floated around today that David Davis, the Brexit Minister, yourself, are in favour of some kind of continuing payments to the European Union after Brexit for some kind of access? Is that something you could live with?
Well, what David has said is that that's the kind of thing that could be considered, but we are not getting, as you know, into a running commentary on our negotiations. I think I've given you a pretty fair 4-point analysis of what we need to achieve. Control of borders, control of money, control of laws, and the ability to do free trade deals. That's within those ideas, those very simple ideas, is a wealth of information about the kind of deal that we want. And I've no doubt that we can achieve it. And it will be good, not just for the UK, it will be good for Europe, the whole of Europe as well.
Two quick-fire questions to end. You may be aware that I recently interviewed your shadow, the Shadow Foreign Secretary, Emily Thornberry. She accused me of doing a pub quiz on her, and I wouldn't ask you questions like this. Who is the French Foreign Minister? The name, please.
If you want to have a pub quiz, Dermot, I'll be very happy to meet you in the pub. But the French Foreign Minister is mon ami, Jean-Marc Ayrault. And I know him very well, and we've had, and by the way, he's an example of the kind of Jean-Marc and I. If you look back over the history of it, Jean-Marc began our relationship by saying some pretty crusty things. Has changed a huge amount, and people across the EU and the wider world are now seeing not the downsides, they're seeing the possibilities, the opportunities, all the exciting things we can do with the Brexit vote, how to build an even more global Britain. And that's what I've been talking about, and people are very encouraged by some of the things they're hearing from London.
Just a last quick stab at the other question. Emily struggled with South Korean president and all her troubles.
we are not getting into a pub quiz about leaders around the world, and I'm going to, with great respect, invite you out to the pub, Dermot, so that we can take these conversations further. I have a terrible feeling if I keep answering you, you will keep coming back with more. Have a good morning. See you.
It was only the two. Oh, well, thank you very much indeed. Don't you want enlightenment? You might be meeting a Park Geun-hye, the South Korean president, and bye there to the Foreign Secretary, Boris Johnson there, talking to us in the main about Brexit. 1 out of 2 ain't bad.